بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. So we have been discussing the فعل ماضي فعل مضارع and the pronouns within the فعل مضارع. Now we've seen all 14 صيغ of the مضارع. We want to explore the i'rab of the فعل مضارع in more detail. So we have the ضمير, we have ضمير مرفوع, we have ضمير منصوب and ضمير مجرور. Those will come up later on. Then we have the ضمير of the مبتدا, ضمير of the فاعل, then ضمير فاعل can be مستترا, بارز. We've covered that before. Now, if you look back here to our table of the ضمير الفاعل, we studied in the i'rab section long time ago under verbs and i'rab. We said that all فعل الماضي are مبني. So that's out of the question. We don't need to discuss that in much detail, because we know that all of the فعل الماضي are مبني. So the i'rab is fixed. Endings will never change. We'll discuss this later on. That's the amr and the nahi, the imperative, the command and the prohibition. What we're studying is the فعل المضارع. Now, the فعل المضارع, if you would recall, we said here, for example, in these ones with asterisks, the ضمير is mustatir, and that's why we wrote in brackets afterwards what the mustatir, what the hidden ضمير was. After that, we said, well, alif is the fa'il, waw is the fa'il, alif is the fa'il, noon is the fa'il, alif, waw, ya, alif. So the question that should come to mind as well, what's up with the noon? Why can't the noon be the fa'il? What does the noon become? So if we look at this, right, keep that in mind and we'll discuss this shortly. If you go back to beginning, we said the simple structure of the i'rab of the فعل المضارع is this. When it's marfu, it has a dhamma, yaf'alu. So there's a dhamma at the end. The dhamma is the i'rab. The dhamma is the sign of the i'rab, the alamatul i'rab, the i'rab. Then when it's mansub, it has a fatha. You have a fatha, lan yaf'ala, and lan is an amil, a governing particle. It makes it mansub. And then we have lam, which is a governing particle, and it makes it majzoom. This becomes the sukoon. And sukoon is also equal to the removal of a dhamma. So it's a removal by removing the last dhamma. So when you remove the dhamma, it becomes a sukoon or a sakin or jazm, as we say. And that is the i'rab of the simple fa'l mudari. So far, everybody following? Yes? Now you remember this table from the ism. This is a complete table of the ism, the marfu, mansub and majroor of the ism. Now we've done this before, but all I want to point out to you was that this was the main type of ism. When it's marfu, dhamma, mansub, fatha, majroor, kasra. But there were always variations. We had the muthanna form, jama' mudhakkar form, jam'ul mu'annath, salim form, and different forms of the mudari take different i'rabs. For example, you have ani here, aini, una, ina, atun, atin, atin, atun. It differs, it varies depending on which type of noun. So you have one base noun, which is a standard, and then you have variations. Yes, and we covered this in detail when we were discussing the ism and the i'rab of the ism. So similarly, the point I was trying to infer or refer to is that the same way you have different types of nouns, we also have different types of mudari, as I mentioned before. And if you look, we can categorize them into, look, this, does it have a noon at the end? The ghaib, yaf'alu. It has no noon at the end. Similarly, taf'alu. This taf'alu, this af'alu, and this naf'alu. So basically, when the dhamir is mustatir, the dhamir is hidden inside, there's no alif, waw, ya, or noon at the end, no dhamir at the end, the dhamir is mustatir, it'll have no noon, no type of noon whatsoever. So far, so good? Yes? Then these have noonul i'rab. What does that mean? That when we have the word rajul, okay, raju, this dhamma is the sign of the i'rab. This dhamma makes it marfu. The fatha makes it mansub, and the kasra makes it majroor. The dhamma is a dhamma part of the word rajulun. Is dhamma part of the word Muhammad? Is the kasra part of the word? Is the fatha part of the word? No. What are these? These are signs of the i'rab. These are ways the noun shows the i'rab. So similarly, this noon at the end, we never said it's fa'il. The fa'il is the alif. We left the noon out because noon is equal to the dhamma or the dhamma. The noon is a sign of the mudari being marfu'. This is called noonul i'rab. The noon of i'rab, the noon to show the marfu' state. So this has a noonul i'rab. In here the waw is the fa'il and noon is noonul i'rab. Taf'alani, alif is the fa'il and it has what at the end? What's that noon called? Ahmad, what's that noon called? Noonul i'rab. Then you have taf'alani, taf'aluna, taf'alina and taf'alani. All of these have noonul i'rab, i.e. a noon stays there to show that this verb is in the marfu' state. Understood? Yes? Now we have two remaining. Yaf'alna and taf'alna. Now why is this noon? This noon is actually the pronoun. This noon is actually the pronoun, the fa'il. So two of them have noon, two types, two categories have noon, but they're different types of noon. One is noonul i'rab and one is noonul dhamir. So we say here noonul niswa. So niswa is a plural of imra'atun. So imra'atun has two plurals. One plural is nisa'un and the other plural is niswatun. So noonun niswa, the noon of women, i.e. the noon which becomes the fa'il. Do you understand? So in summary, we can say the same way you have 9 types of nouns, we have 3 types of mudari. The first type of mudari is that mudari which has no noon at the end. The second type of mudari, which are the ones that have dhamir mustatir. The second type of mudari has a noon at the end, but the noon is not part of the word. It's not a dhamir. That noon is actually a sign to show the marfu' state. And those are the jewels, plurals and the mukhataba. Yes? And then you have the noonul dhamir, noonul niswa. The noon which is actually the fa'il. This comes in the ghaibat and the mukhatabat forms. Understood? So now we understand, we can now lay out our table. So we've done this already. We go over again. When it's marfu', fi'lul mudari without noonul i'rab. Yaf'alu, taf'alu, af'alu and naf'alu. Yes? These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 forms, which are really 5 sigha, but 4 forms. These have what? When it's marfu', simple dhamma, mansoob, simple fatha, and majzoom, simple sukoon, or just removing the dhamma. Yes, you remove the dhamma. Now, if it has a noonul i'rab, let's do the last one first. The ghaibat and the mukhatabat, they are mabani. So in all cases, they remain the same. I.e., the noon is the fa'il is actually this much. So what's the mabni on? The sukoon. It always has sukoon at the end. So the fa'il is yaf'al and noon is the fa'il. When it has lan, it still says lan yaf'al and then noon is the fa'il. So in all 3 cases, it has a sukoon at the end. Do you understand? Yaf'alna, lan yaf'alna, lam yaf'alna. Correct? Yes? Do you understand? Yes? Everybody following me? Ibrahim, you following? Ahmad? Yes? Now the middle one, when the mudari has a noonul i'rab, then because the noon is the noonul i'rab, the noon stays to show marfu'. The noon is a marfu' sign. So when the marfu' is there, the noon will remain. And mansoob and majzoom is expressed by dropping the noon. So lan yaf'ala and lam yaf'ala. Does everybody understand the i'rab table? So in summary, al-madi is what? Mu'rab or mabni? Keep your mics on so it's quicker. What is it? Mabni. The madi is mabni. Fi'l mudari, how many types of fi'l mudari are there? 3. What are the 3? Number 1? No, that's a state. The types of mudari. The 14 sighas, we can divide them into 3 categories. Category number 1, no noonul i'rab. It has no noonul i'rab. When it's marfu', dhamma, mansoob, fatha, majzoom, remove the sukoon, remove the dhamma, it becomes sukoon. The second type are those fi'l mudari which have noonul i'rab. When they're marfu', what do they have? The noon stays in place. When it's mansoob and majzoom, what happens? The noon drops. And the last one is those that have a noon, but a noonun niswa. The noon is actually the pronoun that comes at the end of the ghaibat and the mukhatabat sigha. These words are always mabni, has a sukoon always before the noonun niswa. Understood? Okay. So let's look at the word jazi'a. Jazi'a yadza'u is to be impatient, to be anxious. So what kind of word is this? Madi or mudari? This is madi. So because it's madi, what is going to be? Mabni. It does not have a marfu or mansoob or majzoom state. Then we had the word tadza'u. Which type of verb is this? Does it have noonul i'rab? Does it have noonul niswa? No. So we know which type. It's number one type. Now this number one type, what state is it in? Marfu, mansoob or majzoom? It's in marfu state because there's no amil before. So the default of fi'l mudari is marfu. There's no lan or lam before it. Therefore we say it's marfu. And how is it marfu? With the dhamma. Following? Then we have lan adza'a. I will not be impatient. I will not be anxious. I will not express. I will not do sabr. What's the, okay, what does it have noon al-i'rab at the end? Does it have noon al-i'rab at the end? No. What state is it in? Mansoob. Why is it mansoob? It's got, not because it's got fatha. It's mansoob because of the lan. Lan makes it mansoob. How is the mansoob expressed? With the fatha. Okay. Lam nadza. What state is this in? Hamad, what state is this in? Why is it majzoom? Because of lam. How is the majzoom expressed? With a sukoon. Okay. Next. Labisa. The labisa yalbasu. Labisu, to wear. What kind of verb is this? It's madi. So why is it going to be? Mabni. Correct? Everybody following? Now talbasuna. What kind of sigha is it? Is it madi or is it mudari? It's mudari. What kind of mudari? Does it have noon al-i'rab at the end? Yes. So the noon al-i'rab. So what state is it going to be in? It's marfu state, and the marfu is expressed using what? The noon. Having the noon makes it marfu. Now this is labitha with a tha. Tha means to remain, to stay. Lan yalbathu. Lan yalbathu. So labitha yalbathu, to remain. What state is this verb in? Why is it mansoob? Because of the lan. Lan makes it mansoob. How is the i'rab expressed? Dropping the noon. Dropping the noon makes it mansoob. And lam yalbatha. What state is this in? This is majzoom. Okay, it is majzoom. How is the majzoom state expressed? The noon is dropped. Same thing, dropping the noon. Okay. Najahna. What say guys? This madhi or mudari? It's madhin, so it's going to be mabani. Correct? Yes? Following? Now, tanjahna. Does it have a noon at the end? Yes. What kind of noon? Noonul i'rab or noonul niswa? Noonul niswa. So what's the i'rab? It's marfu', but is it going to manifest as i'rab or is it going to be mabni? It's mabni. So remember, the difference between the madhi mabni and the mudari mabni is madhi mabni doesn't even have marfu, mansoob, majroor. And the mudari mabni, it has marfu, mansoob, majzoom, but you can't see it, it doesn't show it. Yes? So it's like, for example, the madhi is like a rock. Do rocks get happy, sad and angry? They don't have emotions. You have a human being who doesn't show emotions, he still carries emotion, but he doesn't show it. So a madhi is like a rock, it doesn't show any, it doesn't have emotions at all. And the mudari mabni is like a human being who just has a flat face all the time. Yes? So tanjahna, it is marfu', but you can't see it. Lan yanjahna, what state is it in? Mansoob, because of lan. But can you see is there any sign of manifestation of the mansoob state? No, it stays mabni. Lam yanjahna, there's an amil, so the amil makes it majzoom. But can you see the majzoom state being manifested? No, you can't. Do you understand? Have you understood? Yes, any questions before we move on? No? Yes, go ahead.
As an istifham, but even this istifham is like a rhetorical question which is in the meaning of nothing.
Because it's fi'l mudari, and fi'l mudari, if it has nothing before it, the default is marfu'. Okay? It's like, yeah. Understood? Yeah. Okay. Now we're moving on. Yes? Everybody happy to move on? Okay. Alif, waw, and ya. What are these called? Anybody know? From first step to understanding sarf, alif, waw, and ya. These are called huruful illah. Huruful illah. Letters of weakness or weak letters. What does that mean? Vowels, even in English, vowels are, I'm not going to get into the philosophy of language, but vowels are weak, meaning you can elongate them, make them longer, shorten, drop. So for example, like b, this is the main thing. Then you can have a fatha as a vowel, you can have a ba as a vowel, long vowel. So these are long vowels. So these are a bit flexible. So they're weak, meaning if somebody's weak, you can bully them. So these get bullied all the time. They get removed, they get pushed around, they get changed. You can do whatever you want with them. They're very weak. Okay? Not that I'm encouraging bullying, I'm just saying this a way to remember it. Now, so because of this, we have to make some changes. So now, we're still discussing the fa'il mudari without i'rab. So if any verb has a harful illa, a weak letter, whether the beginning doesn't matter. If the weak letter comes at the beginning, it doesn't matter in nahu. So if the weak letter comes at the beginning or at the end, we have to do slight changes. So let's look at the first one. The first top half is the fa'il mudari without nun al-i'rab, but the weak letter is where? Where is the weak letter? Where's the alif, waw, and ya? In the middle. Can you see any difference? Yaqulu, yabi'u to the ending? No, it's the same. So when you have the weak letter, in the marfu state, it has a dhamma. In the mansoob state, is any difference? Yaqulu, yabi'a, lan yakhafa. No, same. So lan yansura, lan yaqula. They all have fatha at the end. So when it's in the mansoob state, marfu state and mansoob state, they have the same i'rab as a normal verb. Okay? When it's in a majzoom state, you have a slight change. Because qala yaqulu, let's say, you have yaqulu, let's do it normally. Yaqulu, yes, yaqulu. Then we put lam at the beginning. What do we have to do now? At the end to yaqulu, give it a sukoon, don't we? Yes? When you give it a sukoon, what does it become? Lam, not yaqul, lam yaqul. Because you have to put the waw and the lam, don't you? Originally. What does it become? Lam yaqul. But do the Arabs like stretching it necessarily? So because of this then, we drop this. Same with bi. So it's ba'a yabi'u. So yabi'u. You make it lam yabi'. It's too long. So that's why here you have the red that indicates something has been dropped. So in the majzoom state, it still has a sukoon at the end. The only difference is you have to remember that something would have been dropped from the middle letter from sarf, the nasara, the middle letter, the fa'ala, the ayn kalima will drop because there's too much elongation. Lam yaqul, lam yabi', lam yakhaf. So let's make it easy. Lam yaqul, lam yabi', lam yakhaf. They like to speak quicker, like me. Yes? Understood? Everybody understand that? So when it has a harful illa in the middle, the endings remain the same. The only thing you have to note is that the middle letter drops here. Correct? Okay? Understood? Yes? Now, when you have the harful illa at the end, this is where it gets interesting. So what should it have been originally? Yansuru. So it should have been yad'ubu. Yad'ubu. But there's that waw with a dhamma. It doesn't really flow off the tongue, does it? Yad'ubu, yarmiyu, yardayu. They don't like having harakat on the harful illa. So they said, just forget this, drop the dhamma, forget dhamma. We don't need dhamma. So it becomes, it's marfu', but the dhamma is hidden. So instead of saying yad'ubu, you say yad'u, it's faster. Yarmiyu, you just say yarmi. Instead of yardayu, you say yarda. So in these three cases, the dhamma becomes hidden. Understood? Yes? In here, it's not a problem. It's still fatha. But because here's already got an yarda, to lan yarda, you can't put a lan yardaya. So then, this too says the same. You can't see the fatha here. When it has a waw at the end or a ya at the end, you can see here, harful illa is waw or ya, the fatha remains the same. So all three of these is normal rules. But here you can't see it. It remains hidden. Understood? And then in here, you remove the weak letter. Instead of saying, when you have, because if you have yad'u, you're supposed to put a jazm, a sukoon, shouldn't we? So the way of making it majzoom is by removing the dhamma. But the dhamma has already been removed, hasn't it? So for example, yansuru, you make it majzoom by saying yansuru, drop the dhamma. But when you have yad'u, you bring yad'u from here, the dhamma has been dropped here. So when you come here, you just drop the waw altogether. So it becomes lam yad'u, lam yarmi, lam yarda. You drop the alif, waw and the ya. That's how the mansoob state is expressed. Do you understand? Does everybody understand that one? Yes? So at the ending here, the harful illa, the dhamma is dropped. Okay? And here at the ending, the harful illa is dropped. Do you go ahead with your question? Do you got a question? Somebody raise their hand. No mistake? Okay, if any questions, you can go ahead before we complete. Okay. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك.